adventure made for capitalism by capitalism.
My thoughts on the Outer Worlds Showcase is I'm very much looking forward to this game. The Outer Worlds 1, one of my first videos, I think it was my second video ever on this channel, was talking about the Outer Worlds 1 and how the game does a lot of things well, but what the game really does well is setting up a foundation for a sequel. And so here, a few years later, I'm very glad to see that sequel finally revealed. I'm glad to see, I'm liking a lot of things I see in this sequel. Avowed came out earlier this year. I played through that. I've talked about it a little bit on the channel. Never did a full review because I didn't end up finishing it. I like the game well enough, but I think the overall opinion on that game is relatively correct in that it's not all that great. It's sort of mid-game that does things well, but doesn't do enough well to keep me playing and keep me interested. Whereas the Outer Worlds 2, if it can take a lot of the improvements, a lot of the good stuff that we got from Avowed, and then mix it with a lot of the good stuff we got from the original Outer Worlds, the stellar writing, comedy, the choice and consequence, if we can see those two things added together, I think this game would be absolutely amazing. The world design, the exploration sort of design of Avowed being brought into the Outer Worlds setting and the Outer Worlds formula would be absolutely fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of that. One thing that I think will worry a lot of RPG fans is the removal of attributes in Outer Worlds 2. This is something we've heard a lot about. They're completely removing attributes and replacing them with just the traits. Where a lot of people might see this as dumbing it down, streamlining, that sort of thing. I do believe the developers when they say, we're trying to make there less choices, but each choice is more impactful. We want you to feel the impact of each choice instead of having incremental intelligence differences that don't impact your game that much. You can have pick the intelligent trait or the dumb trait, and now you have a massive shift for your entire playthrough based on this trait. I think that's really cool, and I think it opens up a lot of different play styles and replayability, a lot of different possible playthroughs by limiting you in that sense. With skills, well, we see something similar where we see the overall skill list is smaller, but again, the idea that they keep pushing is that they're making things smaller to make them more impactful. So I hope you don't see a sort of Skyrimification where it actually removes a ton of that impact, it removes a ton of that choice without making it, have more results down the line. I think the main thing that will make or break this game, for me, it is the choice and consequence, and also is the quality of the writing. While Outer Worlds 1 had stellar writing, amazing comedy, one of the funniest games I've ever played, in an interesting world, sometimes it's comedy sometimes it overdid the comedy, and it felt like the seriousness wasn't done that well. When it tried to do serious moments, it couldn't really overcome the comedy. And from the trailers we've seen, and from a lot of stuff we've heard, it seems like they're moving towards more of a serious view. They're keeping the comedy while trying to write things more seriously. And I think some of that has to do with Leonard Boyarsky taking the reins rather than Tim Kaine. Tim Kaine's more of a comedy guy, more into funny stuff. I mean, he likes the darkness, but Leonard Boyarsky, we see him talk about more serious interest in themes and more interest in writing a story that's deeper and that resonates with people maybe more than the Outer Worlds 1 did. Whereas the comedy in the Outer Worlds 1 certainly resonated with people. So many people loved that game for its comedy. The more serious parts of the story didn't resonate so much with people, including me. I beat that game. I've played that game a couple different playthroughs. In addition to the seriousness of the story, one thing that game did poorly was making each build feel significantly different. you had a lot of skills, you had the attributes, you had perks, you had a lot of different choices to make in your character build, but overall, all those different choices sort of ended up sending you to a very similar path. And then even when it came to choice and consequence in dialogue, we see the same sort of thing happen where, for one, there aren't usually like hidden options. There aren't options that take a bit of more action, a bit more of an active questing approach to find. Sort of like, can't think of too many examples, but Fallout New Vegas and Fallout, the original Fallouts did this very well. Where, so one example from the original Fallout is when you go talk to the cons after they kidnap Tandy from Shady Sands. You can fight the cons, you can work with the cons, join the cons, but there's a extremely deeply hidden option where if you use a stealth boy to make yourself invisible and you have a certain amount of speech skill, you can like convince the leader that you're like the ghost of his like dead ancestor or something. And so it would be nice to see more results like that, more random, deeper, harder to find choices within the Outer Worlds too. And hopefully this more streamlined system, this more streamlined skill system, character building system, will allow for that to happen. It'll allow for them to give more impactful differences, better choices overall regarding character build. But overall, I am really looking forward to the Outer Worlds 2. The showcase did a really good job of showing it off, a lot better than IGN first coverage. That whole thing was messy. There was problems. There was a big focus on. It was kind of worrying me. It seemed there was a big focus on the action, on the combat, on the worlds, and a lack of focus on choice and consequence and story. But when it comes to the Xbox Showcase trailer, that sort of put some of those worries to bed for me. At least as far as Leonard Boyarsky talks about the game, it seems they're very interested in maintaining the choice and consequence, and that's also something Avowed struggled with. Was there were choices in that game, there were differences in where the quests would end up, but overall there was this feeling that everything sort of played out the same. And I hoped to not see that with the Outer Worlds, and if the Outer Worlds to not see that with the Outer Worlds 2, and if the Outer Worlds 1 is any hint to where that's heading and their game development goals and design goals, I think we will see a much wider net of choices and possibilities and consequences in the Outer Worlds 2. As far as the comedy goes, other than that original teaser trailer, which is like full-bore parody of teaser trailers, 100% comedy, that sort of worried me when I first seen it, that that the Outer Worlds 2 was shifting even more towards the comedic nature, rather than trying to find a better balance between the seriousness and the comedic that something like Fallout has. But the more that has released about the Outer Worlds, the more gameplay that we've got to see, makes me feel like they are taking that balance seriously. They are trying to strike a better balance between seriousness and comedy, and I've actually been surprised by how much of the later trailers have lacked like any sort of comedy. And I hope the game doesn't go too far in the serious route, because I'm not sure the setting of the Outer Worlds can really handle all of that. But perhaps through expanding it, perhaps through new lore, it could, and I really hope it would. It would be nice to see more serious stories, more serious themes dealt with the backdrop of, comedy here and there, more in line with the tonal, more in line with the tone of the Fallout games. And now, the Outer Worlds is very much its own thing. I would like to see it, continue to carve out its own place rather than following in the footsteps of what came before. But Fallout does hold the key to some of the problems of the Outer World. But overall, the Xbox Showcase presentation of The Outer Worlds 2 was good. I enjoyed it. It made me more confident in the game and more looking forward to seeing what Leonard Boyarsky, what the team at Obsidian have for us in the future.